Hello Stampers, my name is Linda Bedinger and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, and today I'd like to show you how I made this card. I was inspired by something I saw on Pinterest that put blue and copper together, and so this is the design that I came up with. And what you need to make this card is I used Balmy blue base 8.5 by 5.5 scored and folded at 4 1/4, and then I have a piece of early espresso that is 5 1/4 by 4, and then I have another piece of balmy blue that is 3.5 by 4 3/4, and then we need a little strip. I made mine 1/2 inch by about 1 3/4 inches to put a little sentiment on. And then in addition to that, I am using the Swirls and Curls textured embossing folder. That is this folder, which is just really lovely. And then let's see, I'm using a little bit of copper foil and some of the copper ribbon and a button here. And let's just get started. So the very first thing we're going to do is make our background paper here. And what I did was I used the textured embossing folder, and I did use my embossing buddy on my paper that I'm going to run through the embossing folder. Although on this one, you end up getting, and I'll bring it up so you can see, you end up getting some embossing powder on the tops of some of these swirls here that are mostly blue. And as I looked at it, it didn't bother me. I thought it looked just fine. Okay, so on the side that has the Stampin' Up! Sign here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap my VersaMark pad on that side of the folder, and that's going to put the VersaMark on the top of the ridges rather than inside the indentations, and that's going to give us the sticky on the inside of the pattern. And I'm going to put quite a bit on there. Then I'm going to put my paper here in my folder so that it's fully on the embossing area, and I'm going to close that and run it through my embossing machine, and I'll be right back. Okay, I've got my embossing done here, and so now I've got this pretty pattern. Isn't this embossing folder pretty? It leaves a nice deep impression. Very, very pretty. Okay, so, and to clean that up, all you'll use is one of your chamois, or run it under some water and get that dealt with. So I'm going to grab a piece of scratch paper here. I always seem to make a mess when I do this. And bring on my copper powder. And I'm going to put my copper powder on my folder here, and let's just see what we get. Hopefully we get copper powder mostly in the indentations and not so much on the tops of the swirls. And we can wipe some of that off. There we go. And as you can see, I did get some of the powder on the tops. And what I did was I just used a brush and took some of that off and brushed it into the crevices. can see I'm brushing away some of the powder in the places I don't want it to go away too, so I'm going to have to just be a little careful with that. And just sweep away some of the powder on the tops of the swirls. Again, I'm not really fussed if I get leave a little bit of it, but I don't want it very intense. Okay, there we go. I've got an awful lot of it swept off, and maybe I'm just going to add a drop or two in a couple places that I got it off, and I wanted to make sure I had some. So I'm going to go ahead and quiet the video while I heat set this, and I'll be back in a flash. Okay, isn't that pretty? You'll notice I started heating that from the bottom because I added a little powder and I wasn't sure it was going to stick down, so I heat set it from the bottom so I wouldn't blow the powder away. So that's what that's all about. So this is the hardest part of the card. Because this warped a little bit, I'm going to put some foam tape on the back of this piece to sort of help straighten it out. Let's see, I'm going to cut a little piece here. And I'm going to stick some of this foam tape right on the back of this, and I can trim off any excess if I get it a little bit too long, and I'm going to continue to use this piece to measure my foam tape here, and I'm just using the 3M foam tape, which I like a lot. It's a little expensive, but it really does the trick. So if I put some foam tape down, and it actually tears off, just that the roll is so big. Put this down here on this edge, and then you can just tear it off. It's just such a monster roll. All right, so now I'm going to just nip off the edges here so that nothing shows on the outside of the card. There we go. All right, and now this piece is ready to go down on our piece of early espresso. And I'll just lay that down and we can go on with what the rest of the card is. It's really, once you get the embossing done, this is a very fast card, and I think it makes a really interesting background. So there we go, and that foam tape does help hold down the end so that now it doesn't have that warped look. Then I used a little piece of this copper ribbon, which I love. You must know that by now because I use it all the time. And I just put a strip of this along the bottom of the card, and all I'm going to do is separate this piece a little bit so that I can put it on this piece before we mount it on our card base here. And then I'm going to change up the decoration because I thought putting the copper flower on the first one, on the original there, made it look a little bit more feminine. And for a guy, I have these pretty leaf trinkets here, and or I have some buttons, and we can decide what is the thing we want to do to put this on here. Okay, so now I'm going to stretch that around here, and it takes quite a bit of this ribbon if you stretch it pretty wide, because a lot of it gets taken up in the stretching. But if you don't want a really wide strip, you can get away with a little bit less. But there's my piece, and I'm going to stretch it here so that it'll go across and around my paper. There we go. All right, so what I'm going to do is just put a little bit of snail. I've lost my regular tape runner here. I'm going to put some snail on the back side of this and put this ribbon in place right along the bottom of the card here and tack it into place. And I was fooling around with a lot of these leaves, but they felt like they needed to be anchored, and so I ended up for that decoration, what I did was I cut a little 1/2-inch circle, and then I cut all kinds of the leaves off, and I just used glue dots to create my little circle of flowers, and then glue dotted a little ribbon on the I mean a little button on the middle to hide all of the join areas. And actually you could probably leave this one just the way it is, but then I thought something like that would be a nice decoration there too. So I think I'm going to go ahead and add this piece, and I'm going to grab a glue dot here and put a couple of glue dots just on the back of my leaf trinket here. And I'm going to anchor that partly on the card and partly on the ribbon, as that'll help hold the ribbon in place. And there, I think that's very attractive. Now, if your ribbon starts to move, like mine is here, you can take a glue dot and kind of roll it over on itself to create little sausage. Then pick a spot on the ribbon where you haven't stretched it out much, so it's a little thicker, and put a glue dot behind it. You won't be able to see it, and it'll help anchor that in place. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is my sentiment here, and I have my little strip of paper here, and I have my VersaMark, which is here, and I took this happy birthday from this stamp set. It was a real simple happy birthday, Country Road. Isn't that pretty? I'm planning to do something with this one as well. I just love the way this looks, and it would make a really wonderful masculine card. But I'm using the happy birthday from Country Road on this. And so I have put my happy birthday on my stamp here. I'm going to use my grid paper to help me put it on here straight. And this is a very simple card, and I really think it could be masculine or feminine. So I've got my happy birthday, and I'm going to put this in my copper powder and then heat set this, and I'll quiet the video and be back in a flash. Okay, so there's my happy birthday, and what I did was, rather than put embossing powder around the edge, I decided to use my copper shimmer paint, and I really do like the way that came out. So what I did is I just used my brush, and just like you were inking the edges, I kind of went around the edges of my little sentiment here and put some of that shimmer paint down. Takes almost nothing to do, and it dries pretty fast. And I put it on just like you see here, very uneven, just to get a little rougher look to it. And that is all there is to that. Now I'm probably, because I'm on the video here and don't have a lot of time or want to take a lot of time, I'm going to heat set that paint. Okay, so all we have left to do is to place this piece on the front of our card. There we go. And I'm going to raise this up on these little mini dimensionals and place that right up here at the top of my card. Happy birthday. And for the inside, what I decided to do was to add another one of these leaves to the inside of the card. Again, keeping it just as simple as I can. And I'm going to attach that with a glue dot to the inside. And there we go. So there's two versions of this card, and I think it would look lovely also with a button on here and another little button on the inside, just as easily. But that is the project for today. Thank you so much for stopping by my YouTube channel today. I do so appreciate it. And let's see, this is now October. So the October prize draw for me is a $50 shopping spree on me. So in this particular instance, you're going to get to pick your own prize. So a $50 shopping spree on me for the month of October. And all you have to do to be in the drawing is to make an order on my website, www.lbedinger.stampinup.net. And let's see, this is, if you don't already have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, I'd love to be your demonstrator. And we've just turned the new quarter. So if you were to join under me in the month of October, your first minimum of $300 purchases or sales doesn't have to be completed until the end of March. So it's a wonderful time to join. For those of you that are waiting for the next incentive, it's probably going to be after the first of the year. There's always an incentive to join in January during celebration. So all of this can be ordered on my website. And again, that's it for me. I'll be back soon with more cards and more projects. Bye.